Hello, MechWarrior fans! This is Duncan Fisher. Today is the dawn of an exciting new league. A trial by fire, a proverbial bloodbath of lasers and autocannons, the likes of which you have never seen. Born from the twisted mind of the Dragon's own Hohiro Kurita, this new league will pit the finest MechWarrior units throughout the Inner Sphere against each other via intense skirmish-based combat. If you thought 1 vs 1s and 2 vs 2s was hardcore, just wait, because the Martial Olympiad is reborn.
Hey mech fans, it's Coz and Indigo, and I'm back with you today bringing you a little bit of bonus content for the Martial Olympiad Reborn. Today I am talking with cBiscuit, team captain of 228 Death from Above, and we are doing a little bit of a review on the tournament at the midway point. So we have seen 3.5 to 4 weeks of games as at the time of this recording, and we thought it was a good time just to touch base, see how things are going, talk a little bit about what we have seen thus far and what we might see moving forward. So this will be in addition to the normal weekly updates, and it's a chance to reflect, celebrate, and look forward to what we have coming up. So as mentioned, I'm joined today by cBiscuit, team captain of 228, who was kind enough to stop by and lend some of his insight and expertise and talk about some of the things that he has seen thus far from his perspective as a team captain and as a shoutcaster. So right, let's get into the conversation. Right, welcome to another episode, and as I did mention in the introduction today, we are bringing you a mid-tournament discussion on the Martial Olympiad Reborn, and this time I am talking with team captain cBiscuit from 228 Death from Above. Now the tournament has been running for 4 weeks now, and we are halfway through, so it's kind of a perfect opportunity to reflect on what we've seen thus far, any patterns and trends, and what we think might happen moving forward for the rest of the tournament. So, first off, let me welcome my co-host today, cBiscuit. Welcome, cBiscuit. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty great, thank you.
Good. We had a good game today. That was I really enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, it's always good to have really close matches.
And good to be talking afterwards. Actually, one of the good things I like about comp is just how friendly it is. You know, it's great to be able to just hand out GGs and 07s. And everyone had a good time. So yeah, it was close. You guys played pretty well today. It was I was pretty happy with how Clean Crossfire went. But yeah, you guys deserved the win.
Thank you.
Right, man. Well, let's kick off firstly about our general thoughts on the Martial Olympiad Reborn, and specifically, I guess we're looking back on the 3.5 to 4 rounds that we've seen thus far. Now, Biscuit, you are a team captain, of course, so you have a certain perspective on what tournament means. There's a whole lot of stuff that you have to do behind the scenes, so do keep that in mind, and you know, make sure that you can give the listeners a view of that. But you know, Martial Olympiad Reborn and MWO comp is a new competition in the sense that we've got some new admins. MRBC is at least on hold for now. We don't necessarily know what the future is. Given all of that, given the action that you've seen, given what you've had to do behind the scenes, how have you found the competition so far?
I've really enjoyed the competition, just in general. MechWarrior Online, all competitive plays is fun in my opinion. It's completely different from, you know, quick play or faction play in general. Going with that, I know we have this player-run MWO comp league. I think it's been pretty successful, just in general from now. Definitely make you think on your toes with the Martial Olympiad Reborn, as far as mech and drop deck compositions, allowing the hero mechs in for the first time. It's really thrown in a loop as well.
Yeah, I mean, and particularly if we think about on the back of stock and the World Championships, I think the comp has come in at a good time. And again, not only opening it up to a more traditional pick whatever you want and put it together in a way that best suits you, but to introduce these new rules around, the hero, I think, has added a nice bit of variety, and we do see most drop decks containing at least one hero. You mentioned, of course, that the leadership and the tournament's been pretty well run thus far. they've been pretty democratic about how it has been run. How have you found it from a team leader's perspective around the decision making and the rules and stuff like that?
Well, before the actual competition started, they're pretty firm on what they wanted. During the actual progression of this tournament, we've had a few things that team leaders have voted on here and there, and they've been pretty straightforward and out in the open with their planning and what the future is going to hold with Martial Olympiad. And that's probably my favorite thing about it so far. So they're really taking the players' opinions to heart.
Yeah, and fantastic to build up a competition almost from the bottom up, for lack of a better word, where you are getting the competitors themselves to feed into the format and the rules and the structure.
Yeah, so in the end, the MWO comp seems like, and really is, MechWarrior Online Competitive League for players by players.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And again, I guess we can't overemphasize the fact that it is player run, so it does come off the back of just a whole lot of people in the community putting in some special effort, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end about some of those key players. But I think it's a real strength. I think that you are going to end up with the best format, the best rules, if it is fed up from the competitors ultimately, and I certainly like that they are looking at team leader feedback, so that goes through all the divisions. It's not like they're just getting feedback from top comp players or super experienced comp players. You are getting teams from all divisions.
I do really like the mix of player skill here in MWO, and I think because the players are involved so much, there's more people getting involved every day. I don't know if you saw the stream today, but at one point we had 3 streams going for a comp, as shoutcaster mentioned, and at one point we had over 200 people in one of the streams. So there's definitely a lot of people watching compared to even 3 weeks ago when we first started the events.
Yeah, I mean, the health of the competition, of course, does depend a lot on the viewership. That's one of the things, I guess, that we've tried very hard to do as people that are supporting some of the content around it and the publicity. The more people that can get involved, the better the health of the game and the better the health of competition. And obviously, that'll be something that we touch on a little bit later. The format and rules seem to be going pretty well thus far. Was there anything that you think needs to be improved on, or maybe something thus far that is not working as intended?
Yes, the only thing that's really caught my eye is whenever a team takes a drop deck that is elite, they're kind of hit or miss on what the rules are for, whether they need to redo the drop or if it's a lost drop or consecutive, like people that have done it more than once, for example.
Yeah, I mean that's almost democratic at the moment, which it probably needs to be some jurisprudence around that. I think there probably just needs to be a little bit something firmer in there.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean that's probably I agree with you. That's maybe the only thing work on, I guess, for lack of a better word, that I've seen thus far. But I think it's good that the admins have taken that stuff on board and committed to learning from it. So moving forward, hopefully in the next comp, we'll see that they've settled on something, and it's maybe clearer from the start what's a violation and what's not a violation, and kind of what the consequence of that is. Hopefully it's not something that comes up too often, but yeah, I agree with you there. So yeah, the format and the rules so far seem to be pretty good, and again that comes down to a credit to the organisers. How have you found the level of competition? I mean, including obviously the really good teams, but even if we go down to the Div C, Div D, do you think there's been, any standout teams, any standout players off the top of your head?
Yeah, definitely.
You can say me. That's fine. I mean, everyone. Yeah.
You did pretty well in our drops tonight.
I'm a professional potato.
You're on the wrong team then, or you need to watch out. I think you're playing the Potato Killers next week.
Yeah, geez, well, that's me done. But hey, look, I mean, obviously I'm not the best example, but there's been some fantastic competition, some fantastic players and teams. I mean, anything, how, the general level, do you think it's been pretty good?
Oh, definitely. And talking about, specific teams that I think have been doing incredibly well, and they don't really get a whole lot of hearsay or a lot of talk about them, but R719 and NA Div D, I think they've been doing very well in their division. Of course, my other team, Death from Below and Aces Wild Black Aces, they've all been doing fantastic. Very strong front runners in their competition, though. Then going to like Div C, for NA. I don't really know much about the EU teams, so. But going on, Blackthorn Dragoons they've been doing pretty well. Dropship 4, I think, saw their first loss today against Bears Brawlers, who I think this is their first win.
Yeah, against Aces Wild. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, and obviously just from covering it in the updates, it's been fantastic to see the how competitive it has been in Div C and Div D, because there needs to be those entry points into competition. It's the gap between the divisions can be really, really big, and that gap only widens as you go up. We are in the unfortunate position in Div B that we have to have a crossover match with Div A, so it really gives you an indication of the difference between the level of competition. But to see health and to see such good matches in Div C and Div D, I think is, again, a credit to the organisers and a credit to the teams that are participating there. I mean, as you said, Blackthorn Dragoons, they're 3-1 now. They're looking really, really good. But then you can pick Cameron's Highlanders. I mean, Dropship 4, obviously DSAG today with a very good win over Dropship 4. So, I mean, that division is at least 4 teams that have a chance of taking that. And as you say, there's probably at least 3 teams in Div D that could easily go and take the rest of the tournament from here.
I completely agree. And then Division B, I think, is even closer than those 2 divisions in skill-wise anyway. I know White Knight Legion is out ahead of everybody right now, but I still think MS, Potato Killers, a lot of these teams that are playing. So, for example, Potato Killers beat Death from Above, and Potato Killers lost to Smoke Adders pretty handily, even though the Smoke Adders and Death from Above match I think that's one of the closest matches of the season so far.
Absolutely, that one was very, very close. And yeah, you're right, Div B in NA is super close. But then we go to EU Div B, and particularly over the last couple of weeks, that's even come, Majestic 12 went down. We're really starting to see 3 or 4 teams really vie for that division. Ironically, it's probably the A divisions that look more clear-cut than any.
I completely agree with you there. I know EU Div A really getting run over by, First Jaguar Guards and Eon Tatos. They're pretty clean cut as far as who's going where there. And the NA Div A, Black Omen, I want to watch the match between Black Omen and Blackwatch this week. I know Blackwatch beat them last week. But Imperial still looking like a front runner. But Black Omen and Blackwatch have both taken games on them in their matches, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, EMP are, slightly different even from what we saw in World Champs. But, EMP and Eon looks well ahead, I think, in Div A there, and EMP are certainly looking as though they're the favourites for that Div. So, there's not as many teams in those Div A competitions. Phoenix Legion and Russian Jade Falcon are both very, very, very good teams and worthy of being in Div A. But Eon's kind of going through that one without too many problems. So again, it just shows you those levels.
Yeah, we actually had a scrim against Black Omen on Tuesday, and we lost pretty handily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go through that team player by player, and the roster strength is insane. They're ranked second overall, just behind Eon on roster strength. But again, they've just got obviously crazy good pilots. So yeah, the strength overall, I think, of the competition has been really, really good, and we've seen good games in every division, and I think that's a credit for the way that the Martial Olympiad Reborn has shaken out thus far, is that we are getting that level of competition in each of the divisions.
Oh yeah, I'm very interested to see how World is going to turn out this year too. I know a lot of these Division A and Division B teams they use tournaments like this to practice for World. I'm really excited to see where Worlds goes from here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that is something that we want to talk about, I guess, the health of comp in general, and we'll touch on that a little bit down the track. But it can't be understated about how these tournaments should almost be staging tournaments for World Champs, and hopefully that's how PGI see it, and that they sponsor and support these tournaments accordingly. But it's going to be very interesting to see what format the World Champs are in, because I think with this tournament has been an argument for the fact that by opening up the Mech Lab, by allowing the strategies and the intellects to run wild, you do get probably the best version of the game. So it's going to be interesting to see what World Champs shakes out like in regards to the format and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. We like to run a lot of really weird, crazy strats that end up working, or they lose horribly, one of the two.
Either way, it's exciting, and ultimately that's what you want from comp, is that if there is that room for that creativity. I mean, we talk often about that you don't want a meta, or you want a meta to shift. You don't want teams to have to default to a certain style to compete. You want room for those out-of-the-box strategies to come through and take drops. And, if that's a Loom strat or whatever, you want room for all of those strategies to exist. The same way that you want room for all the play styles to exist in the game itself, in Pug and group and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, let's hope that what we've seen thus far, and hopefully it continues in this comp, but hopefully that's a blueprint for PGI in regards to the Worlds, that they're taking out the best bits of what they've seen from the tournament here.
Yeah, I know PGI has been very good with the MWO comp organizer, going as far as putting a mech sale up and shouting out to the Discord channel here, the MWO comp Discord and the league itself.
Absolutely. Time on their website, all of those kind of things. It's certainly worth calling that out and thanking PGI for that support. So hopefully that they see the win that exists for them as well by supporting this stuff. So we've talked a little bit about the competition thus far, and I think we can probably both agree that it has been a good level of competition. We've seen exciting games across all the divisions, which is, that's kind of one sign of whether the tournament is successful or not. Let's get into, I guess, probably what I'm super interested in, which is around some of the patterns or trends that we have seen thus far. Often when we reflect on the game, like Group Q or Pug Q, it can be hard to pull out patterns and trends. We don't get access to the data per se, and some of the outragey stuff can really get in the way of identifying patterns or trends. But comp gives us that great petri dish that we can see the stats directly, and we can pick up some of that stuff, not only from what we're seeing, but backing it up with a bit of data. From your work as a team leader, because I know that you're probably all over this stuff, what do you think that we've seen so far? What are the major patterns and trends that you think have come out of the Martial Olympiad over the first 4 rounds?
That's a pretty good question. The number one thing I've seen is a lot of the team seem to be very comfortable doing specific things, and they're all pretty different from each other. And that may be mech choices being the same every week, or the same strategy and drops 4 and 5 every week because of the map ban rotation with that possibility. I mean, then of course you had the LRM ATM NARC meta that was going around the first few weeks of the competition until the AMS got buffed.
Well, let's start with strats, because you're right, it's a big question if we talk about what patterns and trends that we're seeing. Do you think that there is a defining strat? I mean, comp is kind of known for almost informing what the meta is. Strat-wise, what do you think the main things we're seeing so far?
The number one thing I've been seeing so far is that the strats are different in every map. And going a little bit deeper into that, I know a lot of the Div A teams like to have control strategies where they do long range and poke forever, and some of the Div B teams do the same thing. There are reasons for that. The biggest reason being, if you're in control of the map, then you're normally in control of the game. And the only way you can be in control of 1,000 meters is to be able to shoot 1,000 meters. And then there's other maps, like when we did the mining collective drops, you had several teams doing the poking strategies from the Team 2 side, and some that just said, all right, we're going to take assassins and linebackers and hold W till we win.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and the maps will always determine, I guess, what the best strategy is. And I think by and large we have seen cap and control, this idea, as you said, that if you control the map, you control the game. And particularly in the map ban phases, I think we've seen Alpine, River, and Rubalite favoured because they give the opportunity for more of that map and for more of that cap and control. The format of the tournament thus far has generally been a brawly map for drops 2 and 3. So I think that's where we most often see brawl, and I guess that's probably one of the good things about the tournament is that brawl is potentially the playstyle that doesn't get enough love, in my opinion, in the game itself. But it's been really good to see those linebackers, the assassins, and that, you know, the really strong brawl strats that are brought in those maps. And then in map 1, you know, where we've had, you know, Solaris, we've had Tourmaline, we've had Canyon Network, and this week, of course, we had Forest Colony Classic. The strats can be a little bit more varied. Something like Tourmaline means that you've got the opportunity to run different strats. But yeah, generally speaking, I think Cap and Control has been most popular. But yeah, it's probably by and large been because of the maps that are selected. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that, yeah.
So the maps, I guess, have informed, you know, what we see strat-wise to a large degree. Mech-wise, I mean, I can tell you, of course, that the Madcat B is the most popular mech, and I guess that probably surprises no one, that's been the one that's been taken out most often. What I have been surprised at is just the rise of the Vulcan 5T. That's the second most taken variant that we've seen thus far. We do have some comp staples in there with Wolfhounds and the Hunchback 2CAs, you know, Annihilators, Assassins, etc. But so far, across the games that we've got stats for, there's been 359 different variants taken, you know, and there's probably, 700 or 800 in the game. So for there to be almost half having been used through halfway in the tournament, I think is pretty good. How do you think that the meta or, you know, the mech selection has gone? Is there any patterns and trends that you think that you've seen there?
You're starting to see a lot of the same mechs do specific things now. Now that we're kind of figuring out the current meta. For instance, we all know the Medkit 2-Bs are very, very good at mid-range DACA. Probably the best mech in the game that does it. But what I'm seeing is a lot of people are using their 3 chassis limit on a mech and then using something weird in like a 4th or 5th slot to do the same thing, just not quite as good as that mech. So I know we took a Hellfire Void last week as Night Gear number 4, just as an example.
So do you think that the general process is to see the map, decide what strat is going to be most effective, see what mechs are going to be most effective in implementing that strat, and then if you run out of your limit, you just try and get the next best mech that's at that job?
I do. At least that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and look, I agree, and I think we are seeing it quite top heavy. So when we do look at that variation, we do see that the bulk of mechs taken in any single drop is within a relatively narrow range. I guess it is quite top heavy. Of that 359 variants, then you're probably going to be looking at 50 that will form up more than 3/4 of all the mechs that are taken across any one drop. So I guess that's to be expected. You know, there will be mechs that stand out for jobs or just in general, but it's still good, I think, that people are stretching their imaginations to take some of those different ones, and adding the heroes really helps that, I think. I mean, again, that speaks to this good addition from the Martial Olympiad Reborn of adding that extra wild card in there with the heroes.
Oh yeah, we've seen, you know, assault, medium, heavies, and light heroes so far with the Death Knell, the IV4. We've even seen a Skokomish from Blackwatch.
Oh, geez. Well, I can tell you that the IV4 is obviously the most popular, and that's great. That's one of my favorites. And not too far behind that is the Sleipnir, the Cyclops hero. So yeah, we're certainly seeing some good variety there. One thing I was really keen to talk to you about is, do you think any of the recent changes that we've seen to the quote-unquote meta, particularly around heat and particularly around LRMs, do you think that's been influential in the tournament? Because that was a question that we had coming into the tournament about whether those things would be influential. Do you think that that's been a big factor?
I believe the heat changes have favored laser boats, like the ER large laser mechs that are being used quite often for the capping control strip. Just because they're basically just used to shoot once or twice and then step out until they cool down. And now they just cool down faster. As far as the LRM strategies go, we were using LRM strats every week until the LRM changes happened, and we haven't been reliably able to use them since then. Us as an example, and it's less an LRM LRM nerf than it is an AMS buff.
Yeah, that's the key point that I wanted to get to, because that's been the one that I've noticed. You guys did it today, you'd said it in your interview, and we did it as well. These AMS buffs have had something beyond LRMs, an effect beyond LRMs. You know, now that they are effective against MRMs and SRMs, they now become a really reasonable option to just hopefully give you a DPS advantage over the brawlier drops.
Yeah, we've been going as far as only using 1 ton, half the ton for the AMS and half the ton for half a ton of AMS ammo. Just putting it on every mech, and if we run out of AMS ammo, then we ran out. For the most part, I don't think we've run out yet, and we've shut down a lot of, MRMs, SRMs. And if you look this week, you'll probably see a use of less IV4s.
Yeah, which is a shame, and it's probably one of the trends, or one of the influences that we've seen from the changes, is that it maybe gives you even less of a reason to take a completely SRM brawly deck. We are still seeing assassins, we are still seeing linebackers, and we do still see that SRM play, but you just have to get even that much closer now to minimize the chance that AMS is going to have the chance to shoot those missiles down. But I think we are seeing more laser brawl, medium pulse and stuff like that. Has that been something that you've noticed?
Oh yeah, so lots of crabs. I know MS can be happy about medium pulse linebackers, and we've been seeing a lot of storm crows and medium pulse huntsmen too. So
yeah, which is good to one degree, but the flip side to that is that brawl was already as a playstyle suffering a little bit, and I don't think this makes brawl better per se. It would be really good as if the AMS buffs were maybe a little bit more exclusive, or the missile health stuff was exclusive maybe to long-range missiles or ATMs and stuff like that. And, whether you need to buff missile health for SRMs or MRMs, maybe that's something that we'll see. But yeah, the heat side, like the side torso stuff, do you think that's been a big influence? Because that was pretty controversial, and there was a lot of outrage, I guess, around the side torso and the heat influence. Do you think that's been big in comp?
I think it has been a little bit, but more on mech construction than mech choices. People are taking fewer light engines and more standard engines, or they're just saying, screw it, and we'll take the XL engine because we die if we get halved anyway.
Yeah, a really good point. And the influence that side torso destruction has, I guess, if you're losing a torso in comp, it probably means that you are, almost out of the fight anyway. It's a little bit more, the line between success and failure is a bit thinner, I think, with comp.
I agree.
Right, so that's a little bit about patterns and trends, and I think maybe one of the good things from the tournament, and again speaking for the success thus far, is that we are seeing a variety of strats, and they of course are dictated by the maps, probably more than anything else, and the fact that we are seeing a wide variety of mechs, even though it is relatively top heavy, and some of those quote unquote meta mechs are the things that we are seeing more often. I do just get a general feeling that it is a little bit more open, and that's really, really good, I think, and that's something hopefully that Peugeot will take on board, and moving forward into World Champs, that they'll give the space so that that creativity is there. Looking forward, we're 3.5, almost 4 rounds in now. Looking forward to what we might see for the rest of the tournament. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, cBiscuit, and considering what we've seen, the trends, some of the teams that we've seen that are performing well, can you give me your predictions for who you think might take each of the divisions and why?
Sure. I'll start off by saying I think Imperial's going to take NA Division A. They've been really strong so far. in their matches. That one's still a toss-up, though. I know Blackwatch had an incredible win against Black Omen last week, so if they continue that, they may have a chance of beating Imperial here in was it week 6? I think they played them. But right now, Imperial's a definite front runner for Div. Div B, it still looks like it's going to go to White Knight Legion, though I will tell you I'm not sure. I know we did pretty well in our scrim against them prior to the event starting or the season starting, and we haven't played them just yet. And I believe they're playing us and the Division A teams next, so they've definitely got it. Look out, somewhere. You got some matches coming.
Yeah. Mr. Samara will be loving that. Yeah.
Going on from there, there's Division C. For North America, Blackthorn Dragoons have just been, I think they've been doing very well so far. And will probably end up taking the season. If it's not them, I think maybe Bears Brawlers will come back. They've been doing pretty good here recently. Probably Blackthorn Dragoons. NA Div D, I think that one's really too close to call between, I know Black Aces beat Death from Below 3-2. But their points are just too close to differentiate, in my opinion. One team has 103 kills, one has 104 kills right now, and 69 to 66 points. So that division is incredibly close. And then, Raptor Talons are really behind them with 57 points and 90 kills. So going to the EU Div A, I think Eon Tatos is going to win this, Eon Synergy. They've already proven time and time again that they're world champ material, and they're doing it again in this event as well. Div B, if you would have asked me last week, I would have said Majestic 12, hands down. But I don't know. I know Furia beat them, and they were pretty close to the bottom in rankings before this, so it's definitely interesting to see. If I had to absolutely pick one, I'd still bet on Majestic 12, just because I like a safe bet.
Yeah, they're filled with quality.
Oh, they definitely are.
I agree with almost all of yours there, and I think Div A in NA and EU, it's probably going to go to those two powerhouses, to EMP and Eon respectively. The Div Bs are very competitive, and I agree with you with North America that that WKL are looking strong, but the gap back to crab people, to potato killers, to yourself, Death from Above, is not a big gap, and that one might very much come down to the last round. White Knight Legion are, as you say, 3-0 in front, but tomorrow's game with MS Crab People I think will be crucial for the direction of that div, so can't wait to see that one. But that one I think is a toss-up maybe between 2 or 3 teams. Div C I think is the most competitive. I agree with you that Blackthorn Dragoons have got momentum. They're playing really, really well. They're 3-1 after 4 rounds. But DSAG, Dropship 4, Cameron Hollander's Claymore, all quality. And, this we may see that one go down to the very last round as well, to see who takes that one. And, Div D for North America, as you say, probably between 3 teams there, Death from Below, 79th Raptor Talon, and Black Aces. I mean, Black Aces are 3-0 at the moment. They've been sensational. So will be, very interesting to see how that one shakes out. But, EU Div B is my dark horse. It's really, really hard to pick. Furious just had another good win. They've gone to 3-1 now. Majestic 12, and even Russian Jade Falcon Irie 3-1 as well. So, you've got some very, very good teams in that division. It's a real shame that there can't be the crossover between EU Div B and NA Div B. That I would very much like to see, because
that would be tremendous.
Yeah, what I would say with Div Bs in both regions is you're almost getting a separation between a top half and a bottom half, I think. That would be, particularly for World Champs, I think, which may be more relevant when you start to strip away the regions. The top half of EU Div B against the top half of NA Div B would be super, super competitive. But I agree with you on most of your picks there, and I do think that we'll see Eon and EMP continue to lead the way. Strat-wise, do you think that there will be anything unusual? Are you guys planning anything that you want to let me in on? Any crazy out there strats?
Man, I'll be strangled if I tell you.
Now, you can be honest, more loom drops, more loom decks?
We are trying to shy away from them for the most part, but we may have one or two here and there.
Yeah, and maybe we did a episode recently on LRMs, and we talked about how situational they are. And when you saw what Blackwatch did with them on that Rubelite drop against Black Omen, there's an example of when you can make them successful, you can make them very, very good. And I don't think teams should necessarily throw out the possibility, but obviously you'd have to pick your time, wouldn't you, to make those strats work.
Oh yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I think their LRMs are going to be more useful in drop 1 than any other drop, just because the mechs are so slow and can't really. I mean, if you're targeting them and they're not in cover, then they die pretty much.
Yeah, really, really good point. Yeah, look, I think moving forward, as you say, teams are settling into a groove, so you'll continue to see the same mechs that we've seen thus far, the ones that are popular and doing a really good job. And it is pretty top heavy, as I said. The kind of top 50 mechs are seeing so much playtime, and I don't think that will change. There's nothing major on the horizon that PGI have got planned, I think, that would be particularly influential. It will be interesting to see whether AMS or any of the changes around LRMs are revisited anytime soon. But, I think we'll see much of a muchness for the next few rounds at least, with a focus on cap and control and using those mechs that we've already seen.
Oh, definitely. The mechs that are winning right now are being more and more prevalent, and as more and more of these games are casted, people can actually go out and see, hey, this mech is something I hadn't even thought about yet, and it's doing really well. So
absolutely, and I mean, as I mentioned, this one of the things I think is crucial is the way that comp will inform the meta. So for me, as a casual player, I will watch these games and see how a team will utilize a certain mech, and that will make me want to take it out in quick play or in group queue. So yeah, long may that continue.
Yeah, so there's two mechs that I think have really stood out more than any other ones as being great in my opinion. Let's see, Commando 1B, and the one that's been seeing more and more play is the Panther 9R.
Yeah, both lights, which is interesting as well. I mean, you used the Panther a couple of times today, and putting the long range options on it seems to be pretty strong.
Yeah, the 3 ER large lasers on the Panther is just really strong.
And there's been talk obviously about the Commando and how bloody hard they are to hit, and even some talk about their hitboxes and shots not regging on them. But in the hands of a good pilot, those things are amazing. I know, and a shout out for one of the members of Clan Crossfire, Fuzzy NZ, he does an absolute ton of work in the Commando, and they can be crucial.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And Death from Below, Chortles as well.
Yeah. I love good light play. It's one of the things that I love about high level, the high level divs in particular, is where you really start to see the difference that light play can make. And it's a group that gets the short end of the stick sometimes, no pun intended. And yeah, to see them successful in comp play is one of the best things about MechWarrior, to see really, really good light pilots getting the most out of those fast movers.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. A lot of these matches for competitive play, if you lose your light mechs, you lose the game.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we saw that in illustrated again in a couple of games that illustrated that pretty clearly. So, cBiscuit, the last thing that I wanted to cover with you, we've talked a little bit, I guess, about our thoughts on the Martial Olympiad Reborn, some of the patterns, the trends, and what we might see moving forward. And we touched on it earlier, but what do you think this tournament tells us about the health of competitive play in general? I mean, as you know, I'm a big advocate for it. I think that there is huge benefits for PGI in supporting it and making sure that the scene is healthy, but I tend to think if you have a healthy comp scene, you have a healthy game. So in regards to comp, how do you think it is faring? And do you think that the Martial Olympiad Reborn and MWO comp has been a healthy addition to the scene?
I'll answer your last question first. I do think it has been very beneficial, more than probably Worlds is even. I do think that the competitive play in general is better for the game. If you look at all the incredibly successful games right now, like League of Legends, probably the most played video game on the planet, and of course Riot Games owning that one, and they go all out. That's all they're about is the competitive scene, and all that did was blow up into a huge game. And then you see MechWarrior Online, where the owners of the game host one tournament every year, and there's okay turnout to that tournament every year, but their player base keeps dwindling because there's nothing else after that. I don't know how many people left a team after Worlds to join a different team to play Worlds the next year. You know what I mean? So I think if PGI held more than one tournament every year, it would probably help, which is why I really enjoyed them publicly backing the MWO comp scene.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think that there is massive wins in it for PGI. And I agree with you, particularly for a free-to-play game, and League of Legends, of course, falls into that. And if we think of Fortnite, which is probably the other widely played game, both free-to-play, and they both rely heavily on their comp scenes to be flagships for the games. And yeah, look, I think that there's certainly things that could be borrowed from that for MechWarrior, and particularly because MWO has a unique experience. Obviously, it's associated with the BattleTech universe, but the game itself has a relatively unique experience, and for the people that play it and love it, that's probably a key part of why they love it. But I also think that Martial Olympiad Reborn has done a fantastic job in breathing life back into comp. I think a lot of people had a little bit of a hangover from stock mode, and whilst in the end we got some exciting games out of it, it was a real grind to get there, and whilst the finals were better than we expected, that was probably on the back of those teams as opposed to the format. So it's been super refreshing with the Martial Olympiad Reborn, again, to kind of open the doors up, let this fresh air in, and again, just letting those team leaders like yourself, those big brains out there, at the strategies and the tactics and at the mech lab, and starting to bring back these just amazing games in the comp scene.
Yeah, so Worlds was really, really fun to play, even with, stock. The only issue I saw with that was eventually the games would get stale to watch because you see the same mechs over and over again. And that's why I really enjoy this type of competitive play, or like the MRBC of, last year or the year before, where mech choices did matter and what you put on the mech mattered even more.
All right, well, that has been a little touchstone and a bit of a review on what we have seen in the tournament thus far. I'm certainly enjoying it. Hopefully you are enjoying it as well. Before we did sign off, I certainly wanted to give a shout out to the hard work that goes into making this successful. Firstly, to yourself, cBiscuit, and to all of the team leaders out there. I know that all of you probably do a ton of work to make things work. Organising times, organising your teams, going through the strategizing that's required, and all the putting up with all the penises that are drawn on map strats and all of that kind of stuff. So a shout out to all of the team leaders that are out there, and of course a special shout out also to the people that are bringing the action to the viewers and the listeners. So for all those shoutcasters out there, it is amazing to have these games brought to life. As you mentioned, cBiscuit, the fact that there are 3 channels on Twitch, because there needs to be that much coverage, is fantastic. And again, that's a massive plus for the game. And I think that's something that Martial Olympiad Reborn have possibly done better than anything that I've seen thus far, maybe even Worlds, is to provide this level of coverage And yeah, that comes on the back, of course, of all those shoutcasters that give up their time and energy, such as yourself, cBiscuit. That's something that you do as well, one of the many arrows in your quiver. But yeah, it's kind of hard to understate how big a role that plays. And of course, lastly, as I have said before, the admins, the live 1991s, Just Call Me Ash, Krasnopesky, you guys, even though you're Australian, are fantastic, and the work that you're doing is amazing. So a big thank you to them as well. And guys, if you see them in game or if you are in chat, make sure to give them a shout out there as well. So cBiscuit, anything that you wanted to say before we signed off?
No. Thanks for having me on. I mean, I really enjoy listening to the podcast. It's really cool to be on this side of it, to be honest. Thank you for the shout out for shoutcasting and whatnot. I am shoutcasting 1 or 2 games on Sunday. It's 2 days from now, my time. I know you're from New Zealand.
Yep, we live in the future.
Yep. So that's another one of my favorite points of this game. Is without this game, I wouldn't be talking to somebody from New Zealand right now.
There's so much good stuff there, and it's something that can be missed a little bit, in that we do tend to focus maybe on some of the negatives or the things that we think need to be changed, but you always need to take that time and look at the things that are wonderful as well. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and lending your insight and your expertise with the multiple roles that you play as a team leader and as a caster, and of course as someone that's having to work out what's happening with the competition and strategize and all that stuff. So greatly appreciated. All right, man. Look forward to talking to you again and playing against you again. And yeah, that is enough from me, listeners. We will catch you all next week.
Now you're weeping shades of Cozen, and you go, God, that made you serve in your Now you
Shutdown sequence initiated.